Coming back in, now that the wine is flowing, it's a little harder to corral you guys back. But please do. We still have some really phenomenal talks for you, and I love that you guys are all paying such great attention. As a reminder, while everyone is taking their seats, take a moment at some point, whether it's in between speakers or at the next break or at dinner tonight, to send a tweet of what's inspiring you. We're seeing some really phenomenal ones. A lot of these screens are behind you so that you're not seeing them, but they're actually picking out some winners, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later, some really awesome prizes. So keep sending your inspirational tweets and sharing what you're experiencing here. There's a lot of people that are experiencing this from the comfort of their own homes, both in the Bay Area as well as around the world. Alrighty. Cheryl Cohen Green has received acclaim for her work as a sexologist and sex educator. Her work with poet-journalist Mark O'Brien was adapted into a major motion picture some of you guys may have seen. It was called The Sessions, which starred Helen Hunt, who actually performed her role. Wow. Vice President of IPSA, Cheryl's been a surrogate partner and consultant since 1973. Today, her talk is called Sexuality and Disability, A Place at the Table. Help me welcome Cheryl Cohen Green to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, you already know my name. That's what I was going to start with. But I've been a clinical sexologist and a surrogate partner therapist in sex therapy for 40 years, and my practice is in Berkeley, California. I'm here tonight to talk to you about a community of people who are unfortunately overlooked. I'm a great believer that everybody has an innate desire, a sexual desire and potential. And the people that I'm going to be speaking about tonight, because of Mark O'Brien, he was my first profoundly disabled client, are people like you and I, only the challenges are much greater. When I first met Mark O'Brien, it was in 1986. But before I get to Mark, I want to give you an idea of the population of people that I work with. There are many clients who have acquired or had a disability from birth, a congenital disability. There are people with multiple sclerosis. Well, that's an acquired, but genetically it's probably a predisposition for it. Muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, spinal bifida, Asperger's syndrome, and people who are mentally, intellectually challenged. And these are some of the clients that I've worked with, over 100 in the last 40 years. Mark was the first profoundly disabled client, meaning that he had been paralyzed, but he didn't have a spinal cord injury. The polio had just weakened all his muscles so that he could not move except for one finger, and he could use his lips. And he would use his lips and his teeth to type on a word processor. He had a stick that they fashioned for his mouth and a little rubber tip on the end of it that he used to type out each individual letter. When his therapist contacted me and said that there was a man that she would like me to consider working with, she said he was 36 years old, he was a virgin, and that he wanted to explore whatever he was capable of sexually. And she told me that he was in an iron lung. My first thought was, how am I going to get in? You know, what am I going to do? But I was blown away by the idea of him typing and writing poetry, and he was working on the book that was published after his death called How I Became a Human Being. It's an amazing book. So my first interaction with Mark was a phone call. He called me and told me that he felt like he was on the outside of a restaurant in front of a large window, looking through that window and seeing a whole group of people having a feast that he would never get to taste. And I said to him, you deserve a seat at that table. So we met. And believe me, if you've seen the movie, Mark was much more fragile than John Hawkes. But he weighed 60 pounds, and he was 4'7". He had very delicate arms and hands. And he taught me how to handle his body, and the intention of each time I was with him was to help him learn, and for me too, where I could touch him, where we had responses that were both pleasurable and sexual. And I do that with all my clients, whether they're disabled or not. It's all about communication, relaxation, teaching clients how to pay attention to themselves, not be selfish, be interested in what your partner feels, but how do you communicate with each other? And a lot of us don't get any of that. I mean, our parents telling us about this, forget it. You know, they have a hard enough time dealing with, I don't know, I know my parents didn't. My mother never explained anything to me. It was all hit or miss. So with Mark, he had also he had not had a chance to go to Catholic school, but he was from a Catholic family, and so am I. So when we met, he came from Dorchester, which is a part of Boston. Yay for Dorchester. I'm actually from Salem, Massachusetts, and you'd think that I wouldn't have this accent, right? I've been here 45 years. But I go back every year to practice. But when I met Mark, I was scared. I mean, I walked in, I saw this very fragile man, and my intention was to help him. My intention with every client, whether they're able-bodied or not, is to go out into the world with a new awareness of how to communicate and how to meet somebody in the future and have a more rich and delicious relationship. And that's the way I felt about him. Although I have to admit, there was a part of me that was very frightened. Okay, I'm going to be doing all these things with him. What if he never gets the opportunity? And he was in the eye and lung, but in the early years, when I first met him, he was able to get around Berkeley on a little gurney. And he could move the motor with his one little finger that moved. And if you've ever seen the documentary about his life called Breathing Lessons, if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It won the Academy Award in 1997 for Best Short Film. You get a real sense of how amazing Mark was. So we learned what felt good, what didn't. I explored his whole body as much as I could. He could not move, so I was very careful to move him to get every part underneath his butt, every part of him. We explored everything. We explored snuggling, kissing. He said to me, you know, you're the first person who's ever touched me for anything but just maintenance, for just pleasure. He had been, you know, kept clean and washed and, taken out of the eye and lung, put on his gurney. But his attendants weren't there to massage and do all the things that I wound up doing with him, especially not to have intercourse with him. It was a challenge because of his body, but we did it. And in the movie, I actually had an orgasm, and I did. It wasn't faked. And I remember, in the movie, I remember sitting there saying, I said I loved him, and he said he loved me first, and I said I loved him, but I also said to him, which wasn't filmed, I love you in this very moment for what we just shared with each other. And when you have your future relationship, it's going to be so much more fulfilling, your partner. So get a futon. He did do that finally. So your partner can stay here with you and wake up with you in the morning and share the morning and breakfast. So we had 6 sessions, and in those 6 sessions, we did accomplish a lot of what he wanted, pretty much everything. 8 years after our time together, he did meet Susan Fernbach, and I can mention her name because she's in the movie, and they had spent the last 5 years of his life together. He died in 1999 in July, just shy of his 50th birthday, but he taught me a huge amount. He taught me how to deal with my next profoundly disabled client. Before I tell you about him, I want to tell you that many people say to me, Cheryl, how can you work with the disabled the way you do? And I said, well, you know, let me think about it. And it didn't take me more than a couple of seconds, and I thought, it was my mother. My mother was my teacher. My mother and I always didn't have a great relationship, and that changed before she died, thank God. My mother and I found each other. But when I started doing surrogate work, she had a fantasy that I was carrying on in something. Get out of the house, she told my brother. She's going to be arrested pretty soon. That was a long time ago. In the 70s, she was saying that to my brother, run away, get away from her. But in later life, she said, I love you and I'm proud of you. My mother was the person who I watched all the time. I think all kids watch their parents, right? I mean, parents are their role model. You can either be a great role model, like Evelyn's family, or you can have some issues going on like in my family and so many others. But my mother always had compassion for people, whether they were able-bodied or not. And I remember when I was just a little girl, we had a friend, my mother was walking me to the Salem bus terminal. And there was this little boy, he was 8 years old, I was 10, so it was 1954, and he was standing there, he was about this tall, he was 8. And he had a very large head, he had one eye up here and one down here, little mouth, strange voice, narrow little shoulders. He limped because one hip was higher than the other. And as we walked towards him, my mother said, "Good morning, Jimmy, how are you today?" And he said, "Hello," and we kept moving, and I must have been staring at him, and my mother said, "Don't stare at Jimmy, you might hurt his feelings." And as we walked further on, she said to me, "He was born, something was happening with his brain, that's why his head is as large as it is, and his body looks different than ours. He's so much smaller than he should be at his age, and he probably won't live to be an adult." And I remember feeling really sad, but also very curious, like kids are curious, what's going on? So I would go to the bus terminal often after school, and I'd see him there. My mom wasn't always with me. And I'd always say good morning to him. "Good morning, Jim." And I'd walk into the bus terminal, and he'd respond back, "Hi, hello." And then one time I went to the bus terminal, he wasn't there. And the next time I went, he wasn't there. And I told my mother, and she said, "I'm going to look into that." And she told me she had found out that Jimmy died. And every time that I went to that bus terminal after, I looked in that spot where he used to stand, and he wasn't there. And it just seemed so unfair. But I love those bus drivers because he had a uniform that they had especially made for him with a little hat, just like theirs with the badge and all. And I remember thinking, what wonderful guys these are. I always liked bus drivers after that. The next person that I found, my mother, when I was 11, a neighbor, some people moving into our neighborhood, they had 8 children, and their oldest name was Carol. And Carol had, she was mentally challenged. In those days we called it something else, and I don't even want to repeat it, but I think she had a lot of physical stuff going on with her. And we had a little beach at the end of our street in Salem. We lived on a cove. And my mom met Carol at the beach, and of course they became instant friends. Often when I come home from school, there would be Carol sitting at the table having tea or milk and cookies, whatever my mother had baked that day. And I'd come in and, you know, she'd be talking to my mother, and I babysat for she and her brothers and sisters. And I cared a great deal about her and her well-being. One afternoon I came home, I was in high school by this point, and I came in and I went to the back door for some reason, and there she was huddled up on the stairs. And she had blood running down her legs, and she was in a doubled over position. At first I thought she was injured, and then it dawned on me she was having her first period. So I brought her in the house, called to my mother who was upstairs, hadn't heard her at the back door. My mother came down. She said, "Oh, Carol, you're growing up. You're getting to be a big girl. Cheryl and I have this happen every month too. Come on upstairs." She brought her upstairs, bathed her, put some clothes on her, and I helped her put a sanitary napkin. Most of you have never heard of those things, and with the little belt and the, I hated them. The metal piece was always sticking in right here. We got her prepared, and my mom called her mother and said, "Carol's over here and this is what's happening." She said, "Oh, thank God she's at your house," because she knew my mother. So years later, I was up in New Hampshire where my parents had moved to retire on the Mount Washington Valley, beautiful area. And my mom and I were talking, and I said to her, "You know, Mom, I want you to know something. I want to tell you how important what you taught me, how much your comfort with everybody has helped me." And she said, "What?" And I told her about Mark, because I had seen him by then. And she said to me, "Would you please tell your father that, because he thinks you ran off to California because of me." I said, "Yeah, well, I didn't say it." "Yeah, I did, but, you know, now we have a chance to really get to know each other because I've had all these miles between us." Meanwhile, my mother, she changed from that point on. Her whole attitude about my profession, my life's work, had changed for the better. Now, I want you to think about something. You know, when you think about people with disabilities, most of us don't think of them as sexual beings. And if you look back at yourself and think about, okay, what if you had a challenge, a physical challenge that was either caused by a birth injury or something that happens, an acquired injury. Would you want your sexuality addressed? Well, that's the case for all people. It's so important for everybody to have that addressed. So that's another reason why I work with the disabled community. I meet the most wonderful people. The second person I want to quickly tell you about is a young man whose parents brought him to me from Minnesota. He was 23, he had cerebral palsy, and he couldn't talk or walk. But his parents had discovered that he knew how to count because his brothers and sister were playing games with him one day and said, "Jim, stick out your tongue." So he did. And then they said, "Okay, Jim, stick out your tongue 100 times. And he stuck his tongue out 100 times. They had no idea he knew how to count. And so they started devising a communication system where he learned how to actually, you know, with the alphabet. He wrote a book, by the way, called The Heart's Alphabet, which is being given to a lot of parents in Minnesota who have children with cerebral palsy, so they can start thinking, maybe there's more I could do with my child and find ways to communicate better. Well, Jim learned how to communicate really well, and he let his parents know he wanted to find out about his sexuality. So they came, the whole family. I opened the door, mother, father, sister, you know, I'm standing there and I'm thinking, oh my God. The father and the sister went out, and the mother stayed with me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, she's going to be here while I'm in there with him. Then I thought, good, she's here. If anything happens, I've got his mother. I made her tea. I said, here are all my sex books. Read them. Enjoy. And she did. And oh, it's such comfort. She actually showed me how to communicate with him before we went in the bedroom. She's the one that lifted him. She did a strong woman. Lifted him, put him on the bed, undressed him. How beautiful is that? I mean, his mother was so concerned about how his life, she always wanted him to have the fullest life possible. And he did. He went skydiving strapped to his father's back later on. Several months, we had 3 sessions. They were wonderful. We explored. He wrote me a letter telling me how much he enjoyed oral sex. I was so happy. And, you know, good. She sent me an email about 3 months ago telling me that she had seen the sessions, and she wanted to tell me that Jim had written the book, The Heart's Alphabet. And she said, you know, after he saw you, he had more confidence and was happier than he's ever been, and it carried through until he died in 2009. Which, you know, I was very pleased that we had his mother and father are a role model for parents who want their children to have as much of a life as possible, no matter what's going on with them physically. Years ago, there wasn't a lot of information. Now there is. Google sex and disability. You are going to find out so much. If you have friends who worry about their back injury or surgery or heart conditions, Google that. You'll get information. I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. The next time you see a disabled person, I'd love it if you would look at them and see they are more like you than you ever imagined. And lastly, hopefully you will understand and feel the way I do. They deserve a seat at that table. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you take your mic off for just a second?
Okay.
Might be better if it was more to the right of the stage. Yeah, that way. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Can we get one more round of applause for Cheryl's talk? Fantastic. We are absolutely loving the tweets, and so I want to give you a little tweet love back just to say that we are loving the tweets. We've had some really great ones come in so far from Inga Barroza, Ashley Millardo, Erica Balbuena. So keep it up. Make sure that you use the hashtag so that we can find them, which is the @TEDx Fi Di Women. All right, we have clearly a fun performance ahead of us. We also have a talk. Hitch McDermott is the founder of Fear Walks. Hitch is an inspirational leader and coach and is passionate about guiding others to more personal and professional success. His talk today is called I Believe. Please help me welcome to the stage Hitch McDermott. Thank you.
Yeah, just right here. Yeah, lovely. Yeah. I was raised a non-believer. My father was an atheist, and so was I. Like father, like son. My twin sister was a star child. Everyone seemed to love her. I was insecure, I was shy, and I just had this feeling as a kid like no one loved me. I remember in 5th grade blowing into a saxophone, and I sounded like a dead cow. All the kids laughed at me, and I was so embarrassed, and I knew I would never be a musician. But my father, he taught me to have a rational mind. So I studied hard. I even got an advanced degree. I worked at the World Bank, Levi Strauss & Company, an incredible technology company. I even had my own business. Things were going great. Except I was alone. I was a failure at all things that had to do with love. I couldn't hold a relationship for the life of me, and I really didn't know what was wrong. But in 2008, things began to change. I found myself camping on this lake in Portugal, and this incredibly beautiful sound came over the breeze. I spotted a musician across the lake, and without even thinking, I ripped off my shoes and in full clothing, dived in the lake and swam for it. I pulled myself up out of the lake 10 minutes later, soaking like a wet cat, and I sat next to him in the circle of 4 other people and listened to this incredible song. This song that started opening my heart. When he was finished, he looked up at me and he said, "We've been waiting for you. We saw you swim across the lake." And he placed this instrument in my lap, and he said, "This is a handpan. Would you like to learn how to play?" And my eyes opened, and I said, "I would love that." And so every day, for 10 days, he called me over for another lesson. He played me a song, and I was in my tent. I would hear it, I would get out and dive in and swim for the music, swim for my next lesson. I could feel the water cleanse my heart of doubt. I felt like I had the potential to be a musician. And at the end of our time together, he looked into my eyes and he said, "I believe in you." On my way out of the campground, a buddy of mine said, "Hey, Hitch, I bought you a palm reading." Well, he knew I was an atheist, and he thought it'd be a good joke. So I went with it, said, "All right, that sounds good." I sat down in front of this guy. He looked like a guru. He had long gray hair and a huge beard, and he took my hand, and he started looking at the lines in my hand and telling me about my past lives. I chuckled to my friend. I'm like, "Yeah, this is good." And then he looked up at me. He stared deeply into my eyes. And he said, "You are a spiritual man." I dropped his hand. I'm like, "Dude, You got the wrong guy. I'm the biggest atheist you ever met. And I left. I said, that was weird. But a year later, it wasn't so weird. A friend of mine invited me to meditate with his teacher. And I thought, that could be cool. And I sat down and I started learning the practice. And within a few months, a strange thing started happening. I felt like I was getting a message from somewhere outside of me. A message that was guiding my life in a positive way. I started to repair my relationships with my mother and father, with my sisters. I started feeling a connection with my friends and my colleagues that I'd never had before. So I went on meditating deeper and deeper. And then one day, I had an incredible vision. A woman came to me, a woman of incredible beauty with brown skin, incredible penetrating eyes. And she gazed right into me, into my soul, and I saw into hers. And I knew this is the woman I was going to love. But I got out of my meditation and my skeptic took over and I thought, that is the craziest thing I ever saw. That felt great, but that's impossible. I'm hallucinating. Well, I kept on meditating and she kept on coming back. And then she started coming to me in my dreams. We began having these elaborate experiences together. It was amazing. I started falling in love with a hallucination. Then, earlier this year, I got a powerful message in a meditation. It felt like it was a message from the universe. And the message was, Hitch, your spirit partner is alive in the flesh on this planet. It is time for you to call to her. And I got out of this meditation and I thought, what is that? And I went back in again, and the message came, and this time they said, contact the artist, Android Jones, and he will paint your visions for you. And when you reveal this painting to her, she will come to you. I thought that was the craziest thing I ever heard. Android Jones is this world-famous visionary artist who projects his art on the Sydney Opera House. Why would he even want to talk to me? And how could a painting ever find my woman in a sea of 7 billion people? But a month later, in deep meditation once again, the same message came back with a super strong voice that said, it is time. And I popped out of this meditation and I grabbed a friend and I said, there's something I got to tell you. And I told him the story and he looked at me and he said, Hitch, just go for it. So I Facebooked Android Jones, and I told him everything. And to my surprise, he got back to me and he said, I want to meet with you. And when he flew back into the country, he heard my story and he said, I'm in. Wow. Thank you, Android, for believing in me. I want to pay you. Whatever your commission is, I'll pay it. And he looked at me and he said, Hitch, your spirits have selected me for this painting. I cannot accept your money. I know you'll find another way to repay me. So for the last 7 months, Android Jones and I have been working on this painting. He has interviewed me about my visions and brought it all into this painting. On Sunday, I was invited to do this TED Talk. Yesterday, Android finished the painting. You will be the first to see. I need your help. I need you to hold the intention for me that she will come into my life. I need you to spread this painting far and wide all over the planet so she will see it. And now, I want to play her a love song. It's okay. I call this song, I Believe. Thank you. I believe.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now dinner time. We're going to take an hour break, so please help yourself. Willow is going to first make a quick announcement.
So we've been talking about your fabulous tweets that you guys have been sending out, and I want to tell you that there's actually some prizes involved. And in addition to some t-shirts and some books, we actually have 2 fabulous grand prizes that are worth putting your inspirational tweets in the hat for. The first one, they're 2 $500 gift certificates that are these beauty bashes that are put on by Benefit Cosmetics. So $500 each. There's 2 of them up for grabs. There's also a number of other little gifts, like I said, t-shirts and books. So keep sending out those inspirational tweets with the hashtag. Our dinner break right now is for an hour. There's also more refreshments that are being put out. So have a great dinner. Thank you so much.
Woohoo! We hope that you had an opportunity to connect with some new friends, and we wanted to make an announcement. We have 2 people that have won a $500 prize from Benefit Cosmetics, and we're just rewarding those of you that are being super social. So we have Inga Berezka, and you can actually go over to Jeff from Forge. And we also have Brittany Jordan. So we have been, the tweet walls are behind you, but we also have t-shirts that we're giving away and some different books and tickets and things like that for future events. So now I'd like to welcome Melissa Sweet. Legendary wedding gown designer Melissa Sweet's perspective on designing was altered when she moved to Costa Rica in 2010. A break from mainstream work encouraged a reconnection to the pure aspect of design and led creating Vita Authentica, a nonprofit that teaches families earth-honoring practices to foster economic prosperity. Put your hands together for Melissa Sweet, and she's going to talk to you about finding what feeds you.
So when I was 7 years old, the hottest fashion item of the moment was a wraparound skirt. And I asked my mother to buy me one, and she said no. Not because our family couldn't afford it, but because she had a different idea in mind. She drove me to the fabric store in my hometown, Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, and I still remember walking through the door with her and her saying to me, "You can have anything you want. What do you want to make?" And I stopped while the understanding of what she was offering me sunk in. And I thought, does she mean that you can just make up whatever you want to wear and make it? Is that an option? As it turns out, it is. And so I wandered through the tables, this maze of color and texture, conjuring up the perfect pink wraparound skirt. Now, the reason this was such a pivotal moment for me was because in that moment, my universe totally changed regarding the choices that I could make. I was being given this opportunity to take something in my mind and create it. I could turn an idea into something I could hold with my 2 hands. To my 7-year-old self, this was miraculous. And I came to know what I now call the fire in my belly, my passion, my intuition. And I learned that I could quite literally make my reality with these 2 hands. I was empowered. I was free. I could wear whatever I wanted to because I could make it myself. I had discovered fashion sovereignty. Now, this aha moment unlocked the pathway, the system for how I would navigate my life. If you can conceive it, you can create it. Just follow your intuition. So what I want to talk about is what happened after the miraculous pink skirt moment and how the empowerment and intuition that unlocked in me became very powerful tools, and then what bridal gowns have to do with growing organic food. But we'll talk about that in a little while. So basically, I designed my way through junior high and high school. I was making clothes for myself and for my friends, and I want to say thank you, Mom. And I also want to say I'm sorry because I took to cutting up her clothes from the closet and from the attic and refashioning them into very cool clothes for a 1980s teenager. Cyndi Lauper had nothing on me. So I experimented and I practiced, and I even sold things that I'd made, prom dresses and costumes and all of this. And then I went to design school. And after I graduated from college, I had the opportunity to work with women who were getting married and design gowns for them. And I discovered another discovered another of my life's passions, working with brides. I couldn't have imagined a greater honor than being with a woman as she stepped into that sacred union and help her to express on the outside the beauty that I saw flowing through her on the inside. I loved it, and I decided that's what I was going to do with my life. So I employed what I had learned about creating my own reality, and I launched a business. And I worked tirelessly designing gowns and honing my business acumen. And at some point, the growing the business part took over. And I decided that I wanted to be successful as defined by the world of fashion. I wanted to make money, and I wanted to be famous. So in the years, I just got to stop because I just said that out loud in public. Whoa, okay. And that's the truth. That's what came. So I applied these tools that I'd learned about empowerment and intuition, and I did, in fact, reach the goal that I was going for in the world of bridal gown design. And I saw how using these tools helped me to create exactly what I wanted to get in my life. Beautiful homes, check. A closet Carrie Bradshaw would be proud of, check. A very well systemized vertical design and manufacturing operation, check. Magazine covers, check. My gowns displayed in the windows of Saks Fifth Avenue and Bergdorf Goodman, check. I was experiencing a designer's dream coming true. And while I was doing this, I forgot to notice that what I was getting didn't nourish me. Countless hours designing and lots of angels helping along the way. A lot of missed birthday parties and missed baby showers and family reunions. And then the excitement and the exhilaration of bringing an idea into tangible reality and the sweet satisfaction of a happy bride gave way to that endless, unquenchable quest for validation outside myself. And I came to believe that I was only as good as my last mark of recognition from the fashion industry, or my next great fashion show, or my best sales exceeded. Gotta feel that one again. And so my happiness had become dependent on those things. And I became a parasite of my own success. Parasite with very nice shoes, but parasite nonetheless. So when I realized this, I felt tired and empty and like a stranger to myself. And the thought, the overwhelm of trying to unravel this web of my life was incapacitating. So I quit. Jumped off, just like that. I spent some time traveling, and what I came to discover was that the same tools, that led me to create and have everything that I had indeed wanted in my life also led to my demise. Like that shiny red pepper, plump and beautiful on the outside, but that was grown in soil with no nutrients, and so left devoid of the power to truly nourish. I was hungry. So I eventually ended up in a valley in Costa Rica. I got married. I had 2 beautiful boys. I learned how to grow food. I learned how to cook. I learned how to milk a goat, put it in my coffee. I went to birthday parties and baby showers and weddings. I learned how to speak Spanish, and I got to know my neighbors. And my husband and I built a house from materials that we found in the surrounding land. And while we built the house, until the bathroom was finished, I bathed in the river. And I set about to create a life that was sacred to me, one that I could make with my own hands, one that sustained me and sustained itself. And life was full. And then one day, I got a phone call offering me the opportunity to go back into the world of bridal gown design. And a part of me went, hang up, hang up, hang up! But the designer in me was elated at the idea of going back to my work. But I didn't want to compromise this amazing life that I had cultivated. So I wondered, could I go back to my work and do it in a way that was nourishing to me? Could I do it in a way that was in a service greater than worldly success? So one night I stayed up really late and I was soul searching, diving, very fervent prayer for direction, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, in that twilight space of consciousness, I saw painted across the canvas of my imagination that I was going to found an organization that would teach people how to grow organic, nutrient-rich food for themselves. Now, I need to tell you, I am not a food growing expert. And at the time, I knew nothing about running a nonprofit organization. In fact, to a former capitalist, that was laughable, and I did laugh. But what I did know was that I was an expert at how to change your life completely and how to reverse the dependency on unsustainable ways of living. So I had my answer. That was a good reason to go back into business. So Vida Authentica was born. This organization has been established to inspire a radical return to earth-honoring, life-sustaining self-empowerment. I just like to say that out loud. Thanks. And so I was thinking of ways that the new business could support the new organization, and I heard this voice very loud in my ear say, 100%. Excuse me, it's my left ear. 100%. And then it dawned on me. If I went back into business and I gave 100% of my profits to this new organization, then the lure of money and fame lost its power. My talents and my energies would be used to help people learn to nourish themselves and the planet. Now that nourishes me. So that's exactly what I did. And for the next 2 years, I also discovered that if I listened to my deepest intuition, and I listened when little angels whispered crazy things in my ear, then I would come to know, if I kept saying yes, that I'm just this little piece of this divine plan that's unfolding. So go back to bridal gowns is exactly what I did. Started designing, and I set about, if I can make this work, putting together the programming and the structure for Vida Authentica, and with the help of this angel, gardening goddess, is it there? Melina, who was the expert that I wasn't. Classes began, greenhouses began to be built, pure native seeds started being saved, and families started eating nutrient-rich food that they grew for themselves. And I watched as this aha moment that I've just been talking about occurred to all of the students as well. And they discovered these new freedoms. Let me back up. This is Anna. Anna grew her own leafy greens, and by eating 1 salad a day, the arthritis in her hands completely went away. Carmen and her husband Rafa started growing non-GMO organic corn in making their own corn tortillas, which you don't find on every corner, organic ones in Costa Rica. And last month, a food truck owner asked them to deliver 300 tortillas a week. That's something for them. This is Mayela. She started an organic egg business, and she was also eating the vegetables from her own organic garden, and this long-standing stomach pain almost completely disappeared, and she stopped taking medication. And so it's true. Teach a man to fish, or teach him to grow his own organic food, or teach her how to make a pink skirt, and you give them the gift of their own life sustainment. So while I was doing all this work, some questions, I have them in my pocket so I wouldn't forget them, started arising for me. What would happen if people all over the globe started growing food that was truly nourishing to them and the planet? If a person knew they could feed their family well and optimize their health with their own hands, might they choose to work at a job that was nourishing to them? Would people become more generous because they grew more tomatoes than they could eat and offered them to the neighbors? Would there be less dependency on grocery stores and restaurants and governments and charities if people knew they had the keys to their own well-being in their own hands? What would happen if this fundamental need to put food on the table was lessened and that baseline fear of survival was answered? How would the world be different? And if parents left their children a legacy of empowerment rather than dependency, what would the world look like 50 years from now? Could these things be accomplished by learning to grow your own food? Here's some things to ponder when we ask those questions. The annual increase in herbicides required to deal with tougher to control weeds on cropland planted with genetically modified crops has grown from 1.5 million pounds in 1999 to about 90 million pounds in 2011. 2.3 million Americans live more than a mile away from a grocery store and don't have a vehicle. Access to healthy food is the #1 barrier to a healthy diet. Processed foods now account for 80% of global food sales, estimated at $4 trillion. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention states that childhood obesity in the U.S. has more than doubled in children and tripled in adolescents in the last 30 years. Let me back up. So I know some of you are saying, I couldn't possibly grow food. I live in a 10th floor apartment with no balcony. Well, it's a window. And these are just a few of the creative ideas that are coming forth from people who have decided to make this radical return to this kind of self-empowerment. So I'm going to leave you with this. My wish is for everyone to know their power, to know that you're capable of changing your circumstances, your health, your level of connection to all of life, to have the courage to change one thing that would be more sustaining to you and to the earth, and to see how it feels. And then to take another step toward that radical return to life-sustaining, earth-honoring self-empowerment. If you can conceive it, you can create it. Just follow your intuition. Thanks. Thank you. What do you want?
So next up is John Pilomeno, and he's the founder of Finding Rover, an application that uses facial recognition for dogs, and it aims to help bring lost dogs home. John considers himself a family man, naming his amazing wife and kids as his greatest cause of all time. Welcoming our first man, well, actually our second man, to the stage this year, John Pilomeno.
Thank you, thank you. Well, my name is John Pilomeno, and I am the founder and chief barkaroo of a company called Finding Rover. We're a technology company. We're only 4 months old. We're here from the Bay Area. I guess you can say that we're puppies in this dog-eat-dog world. But what we've done is we believe we've created something revolutionary. We've invented facial recognition for lost dogs using a mobile phone. And I know you're thinking, facial recognition, lost dog. You probably wouldn't put those two together. But we'll talk about that a little later. But first, I want to take a step back in history. I want to take a step back in how our relationship started with these wonderful animals. So about 30 years ago, dogs were domesticated from wolves. Even in early cave paintings, we can see the relationship between humans and their dogs. In this cave painting here, you see what appears to be a hunter, his spear in his right hand, his freshly caught prey in his left, and his faithful companion in tow. Kind of looks like a wolf. In ancient Egypt, dogs had already become household pets. In this painting, we see an Egyptian walking their dog. I don't know, this may be the first fireman and the first firehouse dog. Not sure. As we move on in time to Europe in the Renaissance, we see a painting here by Piero di Cosimo, about 1462, and this is believed to be the first painting that depicts a dog showing human emotions. If you look closely, you can see the sorrow in the dog's eyes and in the dog's face at what appears to be the loss of its master. In this painting, or also from the Renaissance period, we see a dog with a child. I believe that a dog's bond to a human is like no other animal. They instinctively protect us. They intuitively know what we feel. I'm sure all of you have had the time when you were at home sick or weren't feeling well and your faithful companion was right by your side, chin on your lap, feeling the exact same way that you did. It's just who they are. In the early 1900s, our bond with our dogs became so strong that people believe that we started looking like our dogs. I think this was the first photograph for the both of them. Say cheese. And even today, our furry friends just want to give us a big hug and a big lick because they love us. I think she's enjoying it. But our dogs are also there in times of destruction and despair, when we need them the most. They're always there to rescue us. Be it by land, be it by sea, be it by air, the D team is always there to rescue us. So why? Why do we have such a special relationship with our dogs? Dogs give us unconditional love. They don't judge us. They don't betray us. They don't go out looking for the next pretty face. And they're loyal. Our dog is our dog. Our dog is our best friend. So think about this. You're angry at someone you love, and you yell at them, and you tell them that they're bad, and you tell them to go sit in the corner. Better yet, you tell them to go outside and wait there until you tell them that they can come back in. Now, how many of your loved ones are going to come running back, give you a big kiss, and want to play? I don't know about you guys, that wouldn't work out so well for me. My wife's out there going, no, it wouldn't. But our dogs give us unconditional love. So what is the problem facing us today? The problem is that as civilization grows and populations grow, it becomes much more difficult for our dogs to navigate through this. I'm sorry. So if you leave a door open and your dog wanders away, do you guys think it's because they want to leave you? Well, in most cases, it's because they're looking for you. They want to find you. They want to see where you're at. In too many cities today, dogs wander off, and they're out in this big bad world with buildings and cars and and roads, so they can't find their way back home. Even if a neighbor finds your dog, nothing's guaranteed that they know who the dog belongs to or where the dog goes. So unfortunately, most dogs either are run over by cars or they end up in shelters. This past year, I've visited shelters all over the country, and my heart goes out to every shelter worker, every volunteer who are dedicated to saving these animals. They're amazing people. They do everything they possibly can to find a home, or find their home or a new home for these dogs. But unfortunately, the sad truth is there are too many animals and not enough resources. Last year in the United States, 3 million dogs were euthanized. 3 million. That's 1 every 11 seconds. Since I've been up here talking to you, 12 dogs have been euthanized. But we're here to change that. We're here to fix that. It's not a new concept. We've been trying to save our furry friends for years and years and years. Late in the 1800s, we invented this, what I'll call the first smart dog collar. And you would go down to your hardware store, you'd have them stamp the dog's name and their address, and you put it on your dog, and hopefully if somebody found your dog, was a way for your dog to communicate. Because, dogs don't speak human, and we don't speak dog. But unfortunately, collars, today we use dog tags, we don't use those collars. But unfortunately, they fall off. People move, information's not updated. And a lot of these dogs never make it back home. But that being said, I would recommend that every dog get a dog tag and a dog collar. So about 30 years ago, a new technology came about, the microchip. Wonderful technology. You can't lose it, can't fall off. A chip is embedded into a dog, and if the dog's found and brought to a facility where it can be read, voila, the dog can be returned to its owner. Unfortunately, there is no national standard for chip manufacturers. So one chip can't necessarily be read by any scanner. So you're in a park, it's Sunday afternoon, and you see a big dog. Doesn't have a collar, it appears friendly. What do? Well, if you have the time and you have the resources, hopefully you bring it to a safe place like your home. The next day, you'll take the dog, take it to a facility where they can read the chip, and hopefully the dog can be returned home. Sadly, this doesn't happen in most of the cases. But that being said, I would recommend that every dog get chipped. In Europe, in England in particular, they've just passed a law that every dog in England has to be chipped by 2014. I think that's wonderful. Anything we can do to protect our friends, we should do. So about the early 90s, a new technology came out. The next step in the smart collar, GPS. Everybody pretty much knows what GPS is now. It's a household technology. Well, this is GPS for your dog. The collar will send a signal to your phone, and you can then find your dog if it ever gets lost. A wonderful technology. Unfortunately, like the old smart collar, that can fall off. You have to have a battery, and it's relatively expensive. Not everybody can afford it. But that being said, anybody that can afford a GPS collar, I would recommend that you get a GPS collar for your dog. Anything we can do to save our dogs is what we want to do. So now we go to 2010. I'm sitting in a cafe with my wife, and I look up and I see a lost dog poster. And it just starts bringing back these terrible memories of this dog we lost, this wonderful dog named Harley. And our kids in the back seat crying, driving around, trying to find Harley, putting posters up around town, knocking on neighbors' doors, trying to find Harley. And I thought, God, there must be a better way. There must be something we can do that's better than what we're doing today. And this crazy idea popped in my head. I thought, well, if we can identify people with facial recognition, why not dogs? Our technology allowed us to take a person in a group of 2 million, and in a matter of 10 seconds, find that person with amazing accuracy. So I thought, we need to do this for dogs. So I looked at my wife and I said, I got this crazy idea. What do you think? And she looked at me and she said, oops. That's it, John. You found your mission in life. You are going to save millions of dogs and you're going to mend millions of broken hearts. Go out and do it. Go out and change the world. Wow. It's a big chore. So, what's the first thing you do? I went out and I started researching facial recognition companies that do humans. So I contacted companies and the answer was always the same. You want to do dogs? Oh, they're much more difficult than humans. Humans are pretty, their faces are pretty much the same, their ears are in the same spot, their noses are kind of the same. A dog, on the other hand, they have long noses, short noses, tall ears, short ears, furry. Much too difficult. So basically the answer I got was, thanks, but no thanks. So undeterred, we found these amazing scientists at the University of Utah. So I dragged my wife in the car and we drove 14 hours to Salt Lake City and we met with these scientists at the University of Utah Software Development Center. And I said, I got this great idea. I want to do facial recognition for dogs. And they looked at me and said, oh, dogs are tough. They got their long noses, short noses, big ears, short ears. And I go, oh, I've heard that before. So then one of them looked at the other and said, my dog gets lost all the time. This would be a really cool technology. So they said, look, we can't guarantee that we can do it because it's really difficult. But if you give us a year, we'll do a research project and we'll give it a shot. No guarantees. So it was a year of nail biting and apprehension. But a year later, I can tell you that we invented facial recognition for dogs with an amazing accuracy. You can take 100 Labrador retrievers, put them in the pool, take your lab and match it against those, and yours will come up in the top 2 every time because the technology doesn't know it's a dog. So now we had this great technology. Now it's time to make it work, bring it to use. So we found these amazing developers in Berkeley who had the same passion for animals as I did. And I said, look, guys, our mission's real simple. We want to make it universal and easy to use. I don't want you to have to be an engineer to figure out how to use this. It has to be free. I don't want anybody to ever have to pay for this. I want to be able to save all dogs. And third, I want it in every country and every language within the next 2 years. And they looked at me and go, oh, that's tough. Starting to get the pattern? But thankfully, we're marching on, and 4 months ago, we launched the app. Now, sometimes, some of the simple things are the hardest things to make work. How many of you have ever tried to make your dog look straight into the camera? I mean, now think about this. Now it's not your dog, it's a dog that you find on the street, a dog you don't know. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't carry treats, and how do you get them to look at the camera? So what we did is we came up with the cheese button, which we call the bark button. So what you do is right before you get ready to take a picture of the dog, you hit the bark button. What happened to the bark button? And the dog goes, huh? So basically what happens is the camera starts squealing like a puppy. And 90% of the dogs look at you and go like this. And so, boom, you take the picture. Now, our app allows you to rotate the dog's head, horizontally, so it'll work. And so, with the bark button, we're able to get dogs to look at the camera. So the next step was we had to make it easy. So we'll see if this works. So I'm going to take this iPad here, and we're going to bring it up. Now let's see if it comes up. Maybe not. That way. We're not going to get this to work, guys? Oh, 1 second. Okay. It's coming up. Okay. So that's our dog Lola. That's our dog Lola. So what I did is we put one of our dogs out there like it got lost, and I didn't know about it. I got home at night. I didn't know my dog had gotten out. I say, oh, where's my dog? So I go here, and I put, I lost my dog. And which dog is it? Well, let's just say I lost Winnie. So I lost Winnie, so now the app's going to ask you, well, where did you lose Winnie? Well, I lost her right over here. That's where I lost her. So it says, start the search. So now you do, like you normally would, you do a dog poster. You put a little information about your dog. We're just going to say, okay, and done. So now it's going to start doing a facial recognition search. It's going to search every dog that's been lost in the area, within a 10-mile area. Look what's up on top. There's Winnie. It's that accurate. It's that amazing. So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So if we can go back to the slides, a few more. So now we have this amazing technology that allows us to identify a dog with just a snap of a photo. But the challenge is, we don't need those. We don't need those. But the challenge is just beginning. Does anyone want to take a guess what the challenge is? The challenge is nothing short of a social movement. A social movement. Imagine a world where someone walking down the street sees a lost dog, instinctively takes their phone, snaps a photo, is able to contact the owner and say, hey, I've got your dog. It's safe. Imagine a world where there are no more lost dogs, that we, as a community, as a society, as a species, look after each other's dogs as just like we would our own. We have the technology. Do we have the passion? I believe we do. I believe we do have the passion. It all starts right here within all of us. So you ask me why I'm here. Is this a woman's issue? You bet. Is this a man's issue? You bet. But most of all, it's a dog's issue. It's us giving back to them unconditional love like they've given us. So every dog is a lucky dog. Thank you very much. Great job. Thanks. I don't know what happened. It's okay.
All right, so bringing down the house is Kat Gordon. Popular for launching the 3% conference, Kat Gordon has been called a triple threat entrepreneur. Named one of 2013 top women to watch, she's passionate about creating the opportunity for women in advertising and making a huge impact with 3% roadshows popping all over North America. Put your hands together for Kat Gordon.
Thank you. So the year is 1997, and I am 31 years old, and I am a senior copywriter at Hal Riney & Partners, which is an ad agency here in San Francisco. And my ad agency is invited to pitch the Saab car account. So we scrambled to put together the dream team that will land us this piece of business. And the creative director, to get everybody fired up, takes headshots of everyone on the pitch team, big 8x10 glossies, and he tapes them up in the creative department beneath a banner that says, "Would you buy a car from these guys?" There are 17 members of the pitch team, and 16 of them are men. This man uses Scotch tape on every corner to hang these photos up. 4 pieces per photo, 17 photos total. This man uses 68 pieces of Scotch tape and fails to see that every image looking back at him, bar one, is a man. And he's a creative director. He is trained to notice patterns that others might miss. So guess who notices this pattern? I do. I walk past this great wall of maleness countless times per day on my way to the elevator or the ladies' room, and I'm stumped because I know that women buy cars, and I know that the Swedes are pretty progressive. And I just can't understand how Hal Riney and Partners thinks they're going to win this piece of business with this lineup of talent. And then I do what countless other women are conditioned to do. Nothing. I say nothing. I do nothing. I take this aha moment and I silence it and I stuff it away in a folder in my brain that is marked things that don't make sense to me, and I carry on. The year is 2008, and I am 42 years old. And I am the creative director of my own advertising agency in Palo Alto called Maternal Instinct. We specialize in targeting mothers and women. I spend all day thinking about female consumers. I write a business blog about it. I speak at conferences all over the country about it. And I help my clients learn how to connect with female consumers based on things I know through experience and instinct. And even with this level of immersion, I myself am amazed at how fast the landscape is shifting. Women are out-educating men. They're out-earning men. They're amassing wealth at unprecedented rates. They are driving social media usage. And they are adopting technology at rates faster than even young men. I caution my clients over and over and over to unlearn and unthink everything they assume about who they're targeting and how to talk to them. I call out gender stereotypes in advertising, including those that depict men and husbands as incapable buffoons. So with all this change that I'm witnessing around me, one thing is unchanged, and that's the ad market. Countless all-male pitch teams still pitch car accounts. Oops, hold on. Why are we going forward? Oh, okay. All right. So if you can just cue me back up. Okay. So can you go back to the beginning? Okay, thanks. So countless pitch teams are still comprised of all men. Countless all-male juries still bestow the ad awards in my industry, which recognizes who's the hot talent. All of this change is happening around me, but the ad world is stagnant. So let's go back, and I'm going to ask you guys a question. Who do you recognize? Yell it out. Peggy Olson. Anyone else? The most famous woman in advertising is Peggy Olson, and she's not even real. In the Advertising Hall of Fame, there are 215 people that have been recognized, and only 16 of them are women. Only 3% of creative directors are women. That's the job I do. And what's most criminal about this is that portfolio schools are graduating equal, if not greater numbers of women than men. So unlike science and technology and engineering and math, where they're trying to get women and young girls interested, women want to work in my field, and they start out in my field, and then they lifestyle out right when they're most valuable. And we'll talk about why. How many times have you seen an ad like this? Or like this? Or like this? So does it matter that 97% of the ad messages we see spring almost entirely from a male sensibility? Yes, it matters. Here's the craziest part of all. Women, you are the target. Women drive the majority of consumer spending in this country in every single consumer category except 3. And those 3 are small categories. They're online auctions, computer hardware, and music, I believe it is. So they're not cars and electronics like you might think. $500 billion is spent every year by advertisers in an attempt to reach consumers. And women control 80% of the spending. So that's $400 billion they're wasting to not connect with you. So you would think someone would care, wouldn't you? Advertising is broken due to a failure of imagination. And I want to repeat that. Advertising is broken due to a failure of imagination. This is arguably the most creative, think out of the box, sky's the limit industry, and yet we're stuck because we can't reimagine ourselves as different than in our Sterling Cooper Draper days. But you know who can imagine a different future? Women. Here is my idea worth spreading. The future belongs to women, and we need to tell the world what we want it to look like. How many of you have read John Gazurma's book, The Athena Doctrine? I see some hands. Great book. In it, he surveyed 64,000 women and men in 13 countries, and 2/3 of them reported they felt that it would be better if men thought more like women. This is men and women, regardless of geography or culture, at great scale, overwhelmingly saying that the world's problems would be alleviated if men were a little bit more like women. So not only does the future belong to women, not only do we need to tell the world what we want it to look like, but the world wants and needs us to do so. The year is 2012, and I am 46 years old. And 15 years after my Emperor's New Clothes moment in the halls of Hal Riney, I finally speak up. I suggest a first ever conference, the 3% Conference. I research my heart out to find out the reasons why women are stalled in my field. I tap my personal network. And most importantly, I silence my inner critic that wakes me up at 3 a.m. every night saying, "Who do you think you are to challenge a $500 billion industry?" Somehow, I tune that voice out, and I invite leaders from gender research and advertising and human resources to come to San Francisco and start a national dialogue about changing this. And the world listens. And men show up. And we start to make change. And this is how change happens. And what I want to leave you with is this. I waited 15 years to speak a truth about my industry that is shameful. Please, please notice around you what's happening in your fields, whether it's government or Hollywood or science or law. Notice those faces of men all over the wall, or the way money is spent, or the way decisions are made. Notice things that don't make sense to you as a business person, as a parent, as a citizen, as a human being, and speak up about it, because the world is going to listen, and the world needs you to do so. Thank you.
Wow, what an awesome day. Thank you everyone for being here, and we've never done this before, but I'd like to hear from just a few people what you got out of being here today. By a raise of, we'll just say like 2 people, whoever wants to raise their hand. Actually, why don't you come up here? I have a microphone right here.
Oh, I thought you were going to hug me.
Oh, I can hug you too.
Thank you. I was terrified today, mostly because when I walk out into the world, I know there are people who judge me. I've given lots of talks before, and how many people have you had sex with anyway? You know, I'd like you to think about how you say that to me, and what would it be like if I was a guy up here saying 900 different people. Not that that's the number, but it's close. So, you know, and I always say if there are women in the audience, I'll get a round of applause, and if a few women, thank you very much. But no, I feel so liberated today. I mean, I've had a fabulous day. Thank you all so much. And I've learned so much, and I've met some amazing people. And I have to say that it was a fabulous, well, not have to, I'm thrilled to say I had one of the best days I've had in a long time, other than with my family and my husband and my friends. And I've listened to some amazing speakers. And this last woman, she's right. You know, I really feel like I'm going to be in people's face more. And I don't care what their judgments are. Thank you.
So who wants to follow that act?
For arranging me. My name is Susan Reeve. I'm in San Francisco from New York visiting my grandchildren and found out about this. So the first thing is I am so moved by the diversity of the presentations. But even more than that, I'm so hopeful for the future by seeing all of you much younger than me women who are here, who are awake, who are committed. I am just filled with so much hope for the future because of who you are. And so I thank you from the bottom, from the center, from all of my heart. Thank you.
So, in organizing these events, the goal really in general is to elevate the voices of women all around the world. And we live in one of the most opportune cities in the world. And here we are at this like amazing office. Every time I'm here, I have job envy. And so it's like we have all these opportunities. We're hearing from all different speakers from all over the place that have experienced a lot of business success and personal success. And then again, you know, relieving that and finding like true fulfillment. So there are women all around the world that do not have the opportunities that we have. So I just want to take a moment to honor all of you that actually you are here making this happen. You're the listening for these conversations that actually get to come to life. These women that are boldly sharing the things that they feel are important to the world and are important to themselves. by them taking a stand, it gives other women around the world the opportunity to be inspired and have the courage to go and do the same. So I want to say thank you again to all of the amazing speakers that, everything that you had to do in order to be here, nerves and all that you came, and all of our awesome sponsors. Square, for one, again, thank you so much. Thank you to Vanessa, who was spearheading the event here at Square. Actually, why don't we just bring up the team here. So Vanessa, please come on up. I also want to say thank you to the team at Forge for coming all the way from Boston in order to do our social media. So come on up and make sure you tweet to Forge to say thank you. Thank you to Vida Autentica, who's one of our sponsors as well, which is Melissa Sweet's organization. Thank you so much to David's Bridal. And our awesome video production team, Repertoire Productions. So thank you again to Gretchen Sweet, who's the co-organizer for this event, and Ilana. And Valerie, who's not here, and Leslie, who also left. And then just everyone for being here. So the final thing that we will do is just share with you. So at the beginning of the day, we set an intention together, and we all created with our words and with pictures the world that we want to create for the vision that we have for the world that we want to create for women. And so now I want to invite Stephanie up to the stage to share what that collective vision is. And so we'll just hold that for you. Stephanie, if you just want to share some of your experience with what people were sharing with you while you were doing that.
Sure. Oh, thank you. I don't know, I love that quote that says a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think there's just so much here, and it's so rich, and the imagery, and this is just a collective art piece that really expresses what we're out to create in the world for women and our message and our intentions. And it was such a pleasure to meet all of you that came back and gave a little part of your heart into this artwork. So I just want to thank you, and please come and take a look at it. I mean, there's just, it's so rich with metaphors and just creativity, and it's just, this is our vision. This is our vision for women. Thank you.
So again, I just want to reiterate our massive gratitude towards everyone at Square. Vanessa, thank you so much for spearheading this whole thing, and all of the workers here that have been, picking up, cooking, making our meals, welcoming us, all of those things. So thank you again. And also just the final thing is that we have an after party. So if you haven't had enough, then you can dance the night away at a bar club that's about 2 to 3 blocks away. It's at 316 11th Street, called Bergerac, and we invite all of you to come and attend. There will be belly dancers there, and some other musicians. So thank you again so much, and please post the event. After this event, we're going to post the talk, so we welcome you to sign up for our mailing list on TEDxFiDiWomen.com. And then when we make these talks live, we really invite you to share them with the people in your life. So thank you.